Hey everybody, this is Davis with Con Freaks and Geeks, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of Pop Culture Gems. This is a series where we talk to amazing creators, artists, cosplayers, voice actors, and so much more. If you like the interviews we do with our amazing guests, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel, the CFG channel, or you can either go to our main website, confreaksandgeeks.com, or listen to it on any podcast services out there. Today, boy, do I have a treat for you for you all. My guest has been in the animation industry for over 20 years. He has worked at places like Cartoon Network, DreamWorks, and Nickelodeon. Excuse me. He worked on multiple shows as art director or story artist, or as a story artist, like on Lego Batman, Penguins of Madagascar, Smallfoot, and my personal favorite, The Amazing World of Gumball. He is the director of the upcoming Loud House movie coming to Netflix on August 20th. I would like to welcome Dave Needham to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Well, thank you so much. I'm doing great. I'm actually back in the studio. I've been back in the studio a couple of weeks, which is nice. You know, it's feels strange at first to be back, but it's good to be back too.
How long were you away from the studio?
It was getting on for a year and a half, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, first day back was 2 weeks ago, and I walked in and I see everyone's offices and names, and you're like, oh, then I realized I'm not going to see anyone. It's just me walking this floor on my own.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that must be crazy. Oh, man, I have so many questions for you about the whole process of it, because to say you made to be a part of a project like Loud House movie, directing it, let alone in a unconventional way, it must have been a trek. So
it's been a trip for sure. Luckily, we were on a good path before lockdown started. We'd had a screening. We kind of knew what our story was going to be. And the crew was all dialed in already. But yeah, it was a curveball.
Oh, right. Well, okay. Well, let's get this party started. We'll get you started with some of these simple, small, easy questions here. You've been in the animation, like I said earlier, you've been in the animation industry for over 20 years now, and the Loud House movie will be your first directorial project. Overall, I mean, how does that feel for you?
You know, I love directing. I gotta say, it's my favorite job I've ever had. I used to deliver wine in the mid-90s for a company in the UK, and that was my favorite job up until now. It's now directing this movie has been the most fun I've ever had working on anything. But I'm glad I've taken all those steps in the way. I started off as a designer, and I worked on projects like Gorillas and Mr. Bean in London. Oh.
No. The power just went out.
Oh, here we go. Back. Yeah, directing is just the most fun job I've ever had, and I'm lucky to have had all those different roles on the way, because they stand you in good stead. You learn something every different project, every different director you work with, and I'm just trying to take all of that and move it forward and apply it to this project.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know. When you said the Gorillas, are you talking about the Gorillas, like the band, the Gorillas, or?
Yeah.
Oh, so you did the music. You were part of the music video animation as well.
It was actually before the music videos. I had a friend who was working for Jamie, coloring Gorillas at night before anyone knew what they were, and he got in touch. He said, "Look, Jamie needs some help drawing. He's got too much drawing to do. Can you ape his style and come and help him?" So I ended up in Jamie's studio in early 2000, I think it was, with a stack of his sketchbooks on my desk, and Damon Albarn popping in every lunchtime to play video games. Wow. And it was this cool secret project. I was working on the website, sort of designing backgrounds and corridors and rooms. And Jamie was working obviously on getting prepped for all the music videos and stuff like that. But I knew we were sat on this cool secret that no one else knew about.
Man, that is awesome. That is so great. I love it. Just even thinking about that. That's so awesome. Coming from your extensive animated background, how is transitioning from being an art director or story artist to being the director of the project? Were there any kind of surprises that you experienced?
You know, with all the roles I've done, and I worked at Cartoon Network in development when we made Gumball and stuff like that. So that way you get a fair rounded picture of everything in the pre-production side of things, and you actually, get to work a little bit on the animation, but nothing on this scale, nothing where it's a big overseas studio, nothing where I'd had to really think too hard about music before, or casting famous people, voice actors and stuff like that. So it was definitely a lot of new stuff, but I felt nothing was particularly surprising. I think I've been around the whole process long enough to kind of know what to expect most of the time. But I also had, great people in those management positions. My editor, Peter Essinger's super experienced, and Claire Morrissey was my head of story, and she worked on Trolls and a load of movies at DreamWorks, and she was amazing. And Sue Mont is my production designer. So I had the right people there to support me. And the people from the show, Loud House, were fantastic partners as well.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So, I mean, obviously you're the spearhead of the ship, but you have a really good crew with you. Then it makes things a lot easier for you.
Yeah, it's a group effort, but yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot of looking at animation, and a lot of having to do it from home under unusual circumstances, and having to learn new bits of software to do workarounds and things that you'd normally be in the studio for, or at a post house for, and things like that.
Now, the process of because of the obvious reasons of why you had to work from home for so long, I mean, just I can't even fathom the idea of this, let alone making a movie, a fully animated movie, through the process of this. I mean, was there any kind of tricks that you were that you experienced that you had to have changed because that you weren't able to tell them directly or go to the side to work with them?
That's true. Some things just took a lot longer. There were chains of emails instead of getting everyone into editorial, and we just watch something, we try things out all together. So the process got a little more drawn out. But for me, it was a lot about trusting those people, trusting my editor to do a great cut. We'd talk about it, then he'd send me a quick time, then I'd give him my notes, and we'd adjust it like that. So it wasn't how it would normally be, where you'd get to sit in a dark room together and move things around and try things out. But I think that's the key on this, was learning to trust people to be good at doing their jobs.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a level of trust that I don't know that I could ever experience, or I have experienced, but that'd be awesome. That's awesome. Now, your philosophy, in your personal philosophy was animation is a collaborative process. I mean, and it's very fitting. I mean, from what you've just been discussing about the trust and everything, it's very fitting for, let alone in the animation industry. Could you just kind of elaborate more on that, what you mean, or what that your philosophy is?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's when you're a story artist, especially, you get to work on these sequences, and you work on them for 2 weeks, and you know them inside out. And that means, as a director, I want to hear from my story team. I want to hear what works and what doesn't, where the perils and pitfalls of that sequence are. So I love talking to people. I love to hear what they think is working and not working. That goes for everyone on the crew. And I don't mind hearing something doesn't work, or it's broken, or it's confusing, because it means if one person's confused by it, more people will be confused by it. And that just points it out to me, that's something to keep an eye on and to fix. So I like to make sure that everyone on the crew has a voice, and that they can, doesn't matter what their role is, just speak up and say what they think. It's all really useful to me. I'm not the kind of director who's just I've got it all in my head. I know exactly what every shot's going to look like. I'm in the privileged position of being able to listen to everyone, but being able to choose what I want to do, and bring the things together that I think will make the story the best. So that's really it. Just empowering everyone to be able to speak about what they're making, because it takes a team to make an animated film.
Right. And I mean, and the voice acting cast of the Loud House themselves there. I mean, you got basically the full voice acting cast of the Loud House back for the movie, which is awesome. But you also as well got the special guest, a very special guest of the cast, the wonderful David Tennant, is going to be in this movie as well. Like, I mean, I've been a Tennant fan since Doctor Who, so I got to know like how is how is he how was it directing David Tennant in this movie?
Well, you wouldn't be disappointed. He was an absolute delight to work with. He plays quite a charming Scottish man, so he didn't have to dig too deep for inspiration.
Right.
But he, under the circumstances, you'd normally see him in a recording booth in a recording studio, but he was in his flat or his shed in London and different places where he'd have to rig up, a recording booth out of duvets and things like that. So it's an unusual setting. But one of the things I have to say David was so great at was felt like he was a member of the team. So the artists all had to record locally on microphones that we sent. And then they would send those files back to our engineers in Burbank. We'd be recording them as well, but there's more likely to be glitches that way. So we'd always get them to record locally. And at the end of a record, he would just be like, okay, well, I've got it. I've saved it. It's uploading now. It'll take about half an hour. If anything doesn't work, just get back in touch with me. And he was just playing along and being part of the team. And he was super eager as well. Like, he has a song in the movie, and we didn't quite have it written for him on one of the records, and he was really excited. He's like, can I record the song today? Am I doing the song? He was ready to go. He was a real pleasure to work with.
Wow, that's awesome. Like, wait, like, so they uploaded their parts to you and then sending it back to you, like sending it back to like Burbank. Like, is it like digital? I'm assuming digitally, not not physically.
Yeah, but still, because it's a big file, it might take like half an hour to upload or something.
Wow.
Like that. So he said, I'll check back in half an hour, make sure it's all worked, and if not, send me an email and I'll try it again.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, that's great. And directing like the Loud House movie itself, like actually let me rephrase, directing a movie like from an ongoing series like the Loud House must have had some certain challenges. Like, I mean, like, I guess the biggest thing is like when you have an ongoing series like that's been out for years, and then you make a movie out of it that's still that's still active, that's still an actively ongoing series. Was there any kind of challenges to kind of keep the movie in sync with like continuity to it, or like?
Yeah. Well, we work with Mike Rubiner, who's the showrunner of Loud House, and Kevin Sullivan was the movie's writer, and he's the head writer on the show. So Kevin's been on it since, those guys have both been on it since the very start. So they know all of the little subplots and stories that are happening there. They try and keep track of all of those. So we were always mindful that because it's on Netflix, we don't have complete control of when it would be released. But we talked about how it could affect season 5, and season 5 has some changes. Like, Laurie's gone to college and baby Lily is more of a toddler. She has a little design change. So the movie was set between seasons 4 and 5. We were always talking about it like that. So Laurie hasn't moved out yet, and Lily's still her original baby design and stuff like that. But the series were great collaborators in the whole process. They, if we went too far off the path, they just kind of like nudge us back in the right direction. But that said, it's a movie. It's different to the series, and we wanted to make sure it felt more cinematic, more elevated. And it's very deliberate that I was mindful that we have 2 audiences now. We have the existing Loud House fans, and hopefully a whole new set of fans coming from Netflix. And so the first sequence of the movie just tries to bring everyone up to speed with who the Louds are. And we see mom and dad meet and fall in love, and dad proposes, and they get married by the Loud House and have 11 kids in 2 minutes. By the end of that sequence, like, okay, this is who we're talking about. And then we go in and we focus on Lincoln. So that first act should feel a little more familiar to the Loud House, the normal territory of the Loud House. They're in their regular town. They're in Raw Woods. But as we go into Act 2, they take this trip of a lifetime, go to Scotland. And that meant that we had a chance to just change a few things, like the setups of the cameras, the way we're using multiplane, just to make it a more dimensional and a more slightly more realistic world, a slightly less comic booky feel, less left to right staging, a bit more depth into the shots. And that was all deliberate to make it feel like they'd really like opened up from being squashed in a little house to having the whole of Scotland to roam around and a big castle to explore and all of that stuff.
That is true. I didn't really think of it that way. That since they are traveling to Scotland. It's a way bigger environment than what you usually see in the cartoon itself, it seems. So because since the focus was the family itself. So I mean, is there anything that you kind of like add to like a kind of sneak, or that you could say to what we could expect of how vast this world's going to be from what we would normally like expect from the loud house?
Well, we've definitely got a lot more fantasy elements. We've got a villain for the first time. Normally, the kids are the architects of their own downfall in the Loud House, and the movie demanded just a little bit more than that. And so we have Michelle Gomez playing Morak, and I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say anymore. She looks pretty arch in those trailers. She loves peace and quiet, and we've got the Louds showing up, so there's going to be conflict there. By the third act, it's pretty epic. It's some big action sequences in the third act, way beyond anything we've ever seen in the show before. But I like that we started in those familiar sort of territories for the Loud House, and we move through the gears and we get them to these big sort of finale set pieces kind of organically, I hope.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. One of my all-time favorite anime series is The Amazing World of Gumball. I love man, I don't know what it is. Like every time I introduce a series, like what they say, what's one of my top 5, this is one of them. And I didn't know that you were the art director at the beginning of the series, when it first came out, back when it came out. And I'm like, oh my God, that's cool. So that's even better. So and there was that series itself had a ton of mixed animation styles, that makes it very special itself. And I'd like to know the process of making such an incredibly diverse world in that animation, because when usually you hear the title world of something, you don't think of it to be oh, here's 2D animation people, here's some clay figure, here's some paper mache pinata that actually is made of real paper mache. You had a real hand. I mean, wow. I need to know.
It was so fun to work on that. I wasn't the art director. I was a biz dev artist, I think, or development artist at Cartoon Network. But they paired me up with Ben Bockelay. It was his project, and Ben is Gumball. For all intents and purposes, Ben is Gumball. His sister, in real life, her name is Anais, like Gumball's sister is. So it's really him and his family are the core of that. And we used to just get into loads of scrapes and trouble. Like, oh, Ben wants to get in a shopping cart and we fling him across the road. Okay, we'll do that. So, hanging out with Ben and getting to sort of see inside his brain a little bit. When he produced the first piece of artwork for that, and you saw a photographic background of a school corridor and all these different styles of animated characters all at the same school together, it was like, oh, I've never seen anything like this. We've got to make this. Right. And so my role in that was supporting Ben in getting that green lit. And that meant working a little bit on a 45-second piece of animation that we made with Studio Soy in Stuttgart. And Jakob Schuh, I think, was the director over there that Ben had worked for before. And they're like wizards. So we would photograph stuff and they would be able to show us how much they can move from a flat photograph. And then they'd start building certain things in CG. And in fact, the very first pilot, 45 seconds, Darwin is a CG goldfish. He's not even a 2D drawing yet.
Wow.
So it was early days, but we were playing, and we were it was like the playtime. In fact, I was talking the other day about I designed Banana Joe, the banana character.
Yeah.
I think it was I had a banana, I had some googly eyes, and a camera and some blue tack, and I just stuck those on, made a mouth out of blue tack, leaned it against the wall, took a picture, put it into Photoshop, drew on some stick arms and legs, and it's done. Send that to Ben. Ben's like, that's great.
Man, he must have been this Ben, I would never talk to Ben before, but that guy must have been see a world that no one else sees before, because I don't even understand how like how y'all could have made like 13 episodes in just that short period of time and with that kind of style, because it's like, oh no, it's not flat 2D, it's just like real life real life, all this craziness that went into the
Yeah.
mix. So
Well, once I got to series, I was a little less involved, but I did storyboard I think one episode or one or two episodes. And it was, again, it's just really fun getting it all started. But being in London, the animation industry is a lot smaller, so they had to form a studio, they had to form a company, they had to hire people. That it was all very handmade. Like, just to even get it off the ground required building a studio.
Just for that cartoon, just for one cartoon.
There's a whole production studio put together, and yeah, I loved watching how it evolved as well. And some of the, one of my favorite episodes is when they don't take the money for some kind of hamburger advert, and the world starts to appear and get like more hand drawn, and even the music just becomes somebody going dee, 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 dee.
Yeah.
Anything goes in that world, and it's a fun world to get to play in.
Very much so. And and I mean, like what inspired you yourself to kind of get into the world of like in the animation industry itself? Like,
I always drew comics. I thought I wanted to draw Spider-Man when I was a kid, stuff like that. And I used to make my own comics and print them on my dad's photocopier at his office and try and sell them. And I did it with a friend of mine, Chris Garbutt, who made Pinky Malinky. He's over at Netflix right now working on a new project. And when we were kids, we would just make these comics, and we went to university together. We carried on making comics, and we actually sent them to people we liked, including Bill Ray, who's a background artist on Ren and Stimpy, as well as a cartoonist for Mad Magazine. And he was like, you guys could draw comics the rest of your life if you want to stay in your bedroom forever. But if you want to work in animation, you get to hang out with a bunch of other people and make them laugh, and every day's fun. And we're like, ooh, that sounds better. Let's go for that. So, both Chris and I always wanted to move to the States. I think we made our first exploratory trip over here at 1998 or something. But we ended up moving to London and working all those shows, Mr. Bean and Robot Boy in Paris, and being at the development studio. But I moved to the States 10 years ago, and ever since then, I've been working in features and in storyboarding, and sort of been on this path. It's led me to where I am now. It's all adds up eventually, I guess, but it's not fine. It's been a wibbly wobbly journey.
Oh, I can only imagine. And were there any like shows growing up that captivated you and confirmed that this is like something that you were like wanting to do? But I mean, like you said, originally comic books and stuff, but like, so like, was animation like not even in your idea wheel until the suggestion came when you were in university?
It was something I always loved. I mean, we had some cool British shows like Charlton and the Wheelies and Jamie and the Magic Torch, which you guys never seen, but they're pretty,
I have no idea.
Crazy 70s stuff with witches and mushrooms and people yelling for Stinyog at each other. So there was some crazy stuff, and I always loved it. And I love things like, Battle of the Planets as well, and all different styles. I just wanted to draw, but I was up in the north of England. There wasn't a lot going on for animation up there. Mm-hmm. So even getting to London felt like a big change and a big journey. And in fact, London was mostly commercials and stuff, but I always wanted to tell stories. And I was lucky. There would always be one show in town that was like a series pretty much. And my first one was Stressed Eric, which was designed by Klasky Supo over here. They did season 1, and we did season 2 at studio in Soho. And that was kind of my first chance and my first proper job in animation. I was an art director. Turns out, though, me and Chris were both art directors, and we had one assistant, so that we weren't doing that much directing. It was more like we just have to draw everything.
The title was richer than what you had to do. It's almost like
draw everything.
I directed myself. That's what happened. Oh man. And are there any kind of like styles of animation that was used in the past, like claymation and stuff that you would like to kind of see during kind of currently again? Because I mean, the big thing now is mostly CG, but like it's nice to kind of get a blast from the past. That's probably why I like Gumball so much. But but yeah,
it really is. I mean, I love old Felix the Cat. I mean, he's over 100 years old now, and some of those cartoons are absolutely crazy by anyone's standards. I love that rubber hose style. There's a artist, designer, animator, director called Macbeth. He's a French artist living in London. He does modern rubber hose stuff for his own music videos. I love his style. And there's a guy called Felix Colgrave who it's kind of like he does music videos as well. There's lots of almost feels like cutout stuff, a bit like Terry Gilliam, but brought back up to date. And I love all those different styles. And it's funny, now I have kids as well. And Felix Colgrave doesn't feel like the sort of style most kids like, but my kids are both huge Felix Colgrave fans. And when they ask for music videos of his and they're doing dances based on the animations. So yeah, it's
wow.
There's a lot of cool stuff out there. And
we're thinking like Rubber Band. Are we talking about like the 20s kind of animation, like kind of or I guess most recently, I guess Cuphead would be the the best way. Yeah.
When the whole city is bouncing and dancing, and there's one episode of Felix I watched where there's a club, and you never see a character now who's at a nightclub drinking till 3 a.m. But that's how that episode opened with Felix. Everyone's dancing on tables with beers, and he's dancing with a goat and all sorts of stuff.
We will never see that in a cartoon show.
He's just drunk and he steals a car, and then a cop chases him and he pulls a gun on the cop. Like, Felix is a madman.
he was
having that script in now for approval. Like, hey, yeah, I've written this episode. This is what happens.
Yeah, maybe on Netflix, but who knows? Who knows? But still, that's cool. All right, and my final question is, and I'm not implying if one position is harder than another, but throughout your career, I mean, was there a position you worked on that you felt, wow, this is just flat more difficult than the others I've ever experienced?
I think. It was a big learning experience for me on Smallfoot as head of story, because you've got your department, your story team, and you feel like protective over them a little bit and you want to help them out. And on the other side, you've got the director. And sometimes if the story team see something differently to the director, you're the one in the middle. And so that became the first time really for me that you had a little bit of politics come into it and work out how to make the best choices for the movie. And sometimes you've got to make a choice. It's like, whose camp am I in? Am I going with what the director's saying, or do I have to kind of convince them that I think the story team is right? And that was a big sort of learning step up in that role. And you learn a lot when you get the chance to kind of manage.
Are you talking about as a story director, as in not necessarily writing the scripts, but more like the pacing of how the flow of the story goes wholly, or?
No, you're involved in basically writing the story. It's a group effort, and sometimes it's those age-old questions when you're making a movie. It's like, what does the main character want? And in Smallfoot, it took a long time for us to figure that out. We took a few wrong turns, and so it's in that process that you have to make some choices sometimes about which way you think it should go, and it's picking a side almost sometimes.
and you're the middleman of all of this between upper management and then your staff. Oh my God. Yeah, that's just.
But yeah, I mean, I love working with story artists when they've got an idea and you let them run with it. That's normally the best way for it to go. And between myself and the story team, I think we pitched out beat by beat how we thought the ending of the movie needed to play out. And it was kind of like it was maybe rejected at first, but a few weeks later they came back to us and they were like, "Well, can you go through the beats of that ending again?" And we got it, back out the box, and yeah, here it is. I'm like, okay, let's give it a go. We're going to try your ideas. So, sometimes it works out.
That is awesome. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Hey, David, thank you so much for stopping by and talking about your career and everything. It's really appreciated. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, and also definitely check out his very first directorial debut of The Loud House coming August 20th on Netflix. You better watch it. You're going to miss out. You're going to have missing out some of that David Tennant fun too. So you got to check that stuff out too. But if you did like this interview, by all means, check us out on our YouTube channel, the CFG channel, or go to any podcast services that we out there on the pop culture.
Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jet Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
So once again, this is Davis signing off. Y'all take it easy.